the very heart of this episode is the message to trust and love yourself. Because if you do that, everything becomes easier, especially if you identify as a perfectionist. So this episode is for you. If you identify as a perfectionist or a recovering perfectionist, then this episode is going to explain what's actually happening in the brain, why we are encouraged to have perfectionist tendencies, and why we can often find ourselves procrastinating to the nth degree, and actually the science behind that, like what is actually happening in the brain to make us do that. Because I'm sure I can relate to lots of you when you find yourself procrastinating, you just got to get on with something, and for whatever reason, you don't know the reason, you just faff and faff and faff, and until like it has to get done right at the last minute. So yeah, here is the explanation behind what's going on, so that you can understand, be aware, and move through it, because knowledge is power, is it not? So I'm mainly going to be talking about perfectionism in at work, or if you run your own business, in that context too. But everything I say can be applied to any context and any situation. So first of all, I'd like you to reflect on why you think you are a perfectionist. If you're just listening to this episode and you're not, then great. But if you are listening to this episode and you know that you are, just reflect, like, why do you think that is? And then I'll share with you some of my thoughts. So, as you know, if you've listened to any of my episodes before, the brain is designed for survival only. It's literally the only thing that the brain cares about is survival. So it does all sorts of strange and very annoying things, like making you procrastinate or be a perfectionist. And these are just survival coping mechanisms. They're survival techniques. And let's take those things one at a time. So, what's happening when you are noticing that you are being a perfectionist is it's your primitive brain getting you to overthink things, because the task in hand, you are trying to get it absolutely perfect for fear of what happens if you submit this project or do this post or whatever it is that you're procrastinating and trying to be a perfectionist on. What happens if it's not perfect? So it's an underlying fear of what if. Now, your brain's only wish is to stay alive. And so it's going to get you to overthink and get you to stay stuck in the now, because the now is safe. If you submit that project or apply for that job or post that post or do a live, whatever, then it's different to what you're doing now. So potentially it's out of your comfort zone, or even not. It doesn't matter. What your brain is trying to do is to get you to say safe, and safe is what's happening now. Anything different, anything slightly out of your comfort zone or different to what is happening now, is deemed unsafe and risky in the primitive brain. And obviously your primitive brain is going to get you to do everything, or is going to do everything it can to stop you from doing that. And so you build this pressure up on yourself for it to be absolutely perfect, because what if, and all the what if thoughts come to mind. What will others think of you? What happens if well, I'm going to put last week's episode as an example here. So I yesterday, just before the episode published, like the day before, I realised that there was a gap in the recording, and it literally jumped from one sentence to a mid sentence later on, and it made no sense at all. I couldn't for the life of me find what had happened in the editing process. So I basically had to get my microphone out and record a little segment to go in the middle in order for it to make sense. Now, listening back, it doesn't take an expert to realise that there's like a bit inserted in, because the volume's slightly different and whatever. But I'm not a perfectionist. I know that that was the only option to do. Otherwise, waste an episode that I was really proud of. I know that there's a lot of stuff on there that will have been really helpful to listeners. And so what? Basically, done is good enough is a motto that I that I live by now. Or another good one for entrepreneurs is fast, messy action. And I dedicate that to one of my first business coaches. Like, it's just so good it's refreshing to have that feeling of just get it done, just get it done. And as I shared right at the beginning of this episode, you have to trust and love yourself first. That's the underlying message here, because if you're in your intellectual mind and you have that trust in yourself, and that self-love and self-belief and self-confidence and all the rest of that will carry you forward and enable you to just move through the imperfections. Focusing on the things that could go wrong, or focusing on what potentially others will think of you, is not going to do you any favors, because in reality, what others think of you is none of your business. You're never going to know. So you're only ever in your own head. And as I've shared before in other episodes, everybody is always looking at life through their own lens. Everybody is only ever in their own head. So you never have any control over what others think of you. And it's always determined by their life experience previously. And so yeah, you're going to be finding the things that I'm sharing here easier to act on if you're in your intellectual mind, or if you're not stuck in survival mode. Because if you're stuck in survival mode, then it's very likely that overthinking has become very ingrained in your life, and will be very hard not to overthink. Because overthinking, if it's something that you're doing a lot, then that has become a coping mechanism for you. Because your brain is designed to keep you alive, and your brain can only do what it's done before. So if overthinking is something that you've come to rely on, then it's going to do that because it thinks that that's what's keeping you safe, regardless of how it's making you feel, whether you're feeling absolutely exhausted from having 100 times more thoughts per minute than you need to. Like, you'll know what I mean. If you're an overthinker, it's absolutely draining and exhausting. But your primitive brain is always going to get you to rely on the same coping mechanisms, because it just can't conceive of doing anything different, because doing something different presents a risk, and it's not going to take a risk because its number one priority is to keep you alive. So yeah, overthinking, if you're stuck overthinking and most likely experiencing brain fog or a lot of self-doubt, or just having a lack of trust or lack of confidence in yourself, then these tips might be harder to implement than otherwise. I would suggest that you go and listen to the episode on the subconscious mind, if you haven't listened to that already, and start implementing those tips to try and bring yourself out of survival mode a little bit, and then maybe come back to this episode. Or if you want a fast track, feel free to get in touch with me. My work is as a solution focused hypnotherapist and coach is to bring people out of survival mode and get them living from their intellectual mind, living the true version of who they are, and not being held back, and getting rid of limiting beliefs and all of that wonderful stuff. But you can do a lot to help yourself just by listening and implementing the things in my episodes. So yeah, why it's happening then, why this perfectionism is happening, if it's a theme for you, again, it's become a coping mechanism. So you're delaying whatever it is, just delaying, because if it's not perfect, then I can't do it. And so perfectionism and procrastination often go hand in hand, because of that pressure that you put on yourself that it has to be perfect. And so it's most likely going to take 10 times longer than it needs to actually get done. And so in the workplace, or if you're working on your own business, then you'll easily find yourself doing easy, menial tasks rather than actually focusing on the priorities. And if you've got your own business, it's like the needle movers, the things that are actually going to make a difference in your business are the things that are at the bottom of the pile, because they feel the hardest to do. For example, if you're an online business owner and you need to be visible, you need to show up on stories and show your face, for example, and that feels like the hardest thing to do, then you'll just put that off and do easier things like making everything look aesthetically pleasing via Canva, and just focusing on the non-needle movers, basically. And procrastination is really a technique that's happening when you're in your primitive brain, because it's your brain trying to keep you safe. Now, what's actually happening here then is your brain is recognizing what is happening when you hesitate. So that your brain can tell the difference between something where you don't hesitate and you just do it on autopilot. So, for example, brushing your teeth in the morning. There's no way. Well, I hope not. There's no way that you hesitate. You just go in the bathroom, you brush your teeth, and that's it. Job done. Like it's a hardwired habit. Hopefully, but anything else, like if you come up with an idea that you think, oh, it's brilliant, but then you don't instantly go and do that idea, then your brain notices, and your brain is like, okay, hang on, what's happening here? You thought of a great idea, but then you didn't act on it. So there must be a reason for this. And so if your brain notices, this is your primitive brain, by the way, if it notices that there's hesitation, then it's going to think that the alarm bells are going to ring and think, hang on a second, this is probably not a good idea, because if it was a good idea, you'd have done it straight away, just like brushing your teeth or, whatever. And so when the brain notices that hesitation, it signifies risk. And what it's going to do to try and stop you doing that thing is to magnify that risk, magnify it to stop you doing the thing that probably is going to help you, that's probably going to move your business forward or move you forward in life. Let's say it's applying for a job. If you don't do it straight away, if you put it off, then your brain is going to think of all the different reasons why you should keep putting it off rather than just getting on with it and doing it. And so, yeah, it's hesitation is something that your brain is just going to latch onto. And so I'd love to share with you some tips now that can hopefully help you to move through this so that you can practice moving past perfectionist tendencies and just getting on with the things that are important, whether it's in life in general or in your own business. So something that I have found really helps to minimize the feeling of overwhelm and how much there is to do is to use micro to-do lists. So obviously there'll be a big to-do list, a big sort of list of things that I need to get done. I'll often brain dump those just to get them out of my head and onto paper. But then once that big to-do list is there, it's not massively helpful to have it staring at me in the face. And I'm sure you'll resonate with this. You never ever seem to get to the end of a to-do list. And so you go to bed at night thinking, oh, I didn't get that done. And oh, I didn't manage to finish my to-do list again today. And the brain is focused always on trying to notice the negatives over the positive, because that's what's going to keep you alive in a caveman type context. So we'll never go to bed thinking, oh, I completed everything but one thing on my to-do list. It just wouldn't do that. So you can shift this massively by starting to use micro to-do lists. And this is what I do. And it's so much better. It just shifts it to a more positive thing. So I've got and I create micro to-do lists. And that is just 3 things that go on the to-do list. And I don't do anything else until those 3 things are done. And what that helps me to do is move through it and finish it faster. And when you complete something in your brain, you'll get some feel-good chemicals. You'll get some dopamine, which is the achievement hormone. And so you finish the micro to-do list, you feel great, you've got some momentum. And this is my perspective anyway. I feel great when I finish a micro to-do list and I've got momentum, and I find myself writing the next micro to-do list, just 3 things, and then finish that and get on with the next one. And easily I've managed to complete like 5 or 6 micro to-do lists sometimes. These aren't always on my business. I'll do these for like housework or whatever. And it just feels so much better because it feels so much more positive. Just get more done. And another thing to do is to have a cut-off time. If you've got a task to do and you are a perfectionist, then it will give your task will expand to a lot, however much time you give it. This is something called Parkinson's law, which is literally your work will expand until there is a cut-off time. And I've definitely experienced this in teaching when I was sort of lesson planning. If I allowed myself to stay till 6 o'clock at work every night, then I would have done. But if there was one day when I had to get home for whatever reason, or an appointment or to the bank by 5 o'clock or whatever, I'd be out the door and then make sure that my work would have been done. I'd have been more productive and just got it done. So definitely set yourself a cut-off time and be realistic with how much you can achieve in that. But once that cut-off time it has arrived, that's it. Practice moving through and being okay with done is good enough. And the more you practice that done is good enough or fast, messy action, the more it feels normal. And obviously, you've got that underlying thing that I said about trusting in yourself. And that carries you so far, because if you trust in yourself and believe in yourself and just are happy with who you are, then you don't worry about what others think of you so much, because you know that it's none of your business. You just stay in your own lane and you just focus on yourself and you focus on your priorities, and you're able to maintain perspective so much more easily. I'd love actually to share a little book recommendation, which has really helped me over the last since I started my business. And that is a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a fantastic book and has helped me form like small habits that are really helpful. And it's basically a lot of the science behind how we create habits. And one of those is just get rid of distractions. They're just not helpful to you. So yeah, absolutely. It seems like an obvious one, but they're so easy not to do a lot of the time. So yeah, get rid of distractions, make life easy for yourself. And yeah, for more tips on like creating good habits that actually last and become automatic and hardwired, have a little read or a listen of the book by James Clear, Atomic Habits. So that's it. I tried to get a nice shorter episode for you this week because last week was a bit of a bumper one. I hope you enjoyed it though. It was full of lots on the subconscious mind. And actually just invite you again, if some of this stuff that I've said to you today seems like really good, but a bit unattainable for you because you recognize that you might be stuck in survival mode and overthinking is a huge thing in your day-to-day life, then I would recommend, first of all, going back to the episode on your amazing subconscious mind and really trying to implement some of those tips consistently so that you start to change your habits and at least alleviate some of what's in your stress bucket, so that the tips that I share today are more attainable for you. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you have enjoyed what you've heard here and know that other people will benefit too, please do share with a friend or stick me up on your stories and tag me on Instagram at Believe and Achieve with Jenna, and I'll reshare to my audience. Thank you very much, and I will see you all soon. Bye. My mission with this podcast, How to Change Your Life, was always to serve. And so I really hope that everything I'm sharing with you today and in previous episodes is serving you and helping you to change your life. It requires consistent action. It requires hard work and effort. But if you're willing to do that, then you can absolutely change and a great deal just by listening to me and inputting my advice. However, if you're listening and you want to work with me, then obviously I work too. I do solution-focused hypnotherapy, and my program is called Change Your Life, and it's a program that I am really proud of. So if you are feeling the pull and you would like some more information on how this program works, whether it would be right for you, then do get in touch with me. The information is in the show notes, but essentially it involves sending me a DM, a direct message on Instagram with the word change, or you can email me to info@believe-achieve.co.uk. Thanks very much.